This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from J.S. Gray. If Jim was in a position to do so, what would be the first one-for-one trade he would make between AEW and WWE? It's an interesting question because we've never had, baseball or any sport, you could trade players. Because wrestling promoters typically hate each other, you don't get a lot of that. Every now and then, Memphis, Mid-South, you get a trade. But if AEW and WWE are able to say, you know what, maybe there's something that could be mutually beneficial to both of us, a win-win, what would it be?
I'll tell you what. If I was Tony Khan, I would give Vince McMahon anybody for Paul Heyman. Because Tony has plenty of wrestlers. Some of them are even good. And a lot of Vince's wrestlers, as we just talked about on one of the shows, if you put them in Tony's environment, they may not be as over as they are in Vince's, because it's a little bit different stylistically, and the fan base takes everybody different. But if I was Tony, I won't say I wouldn't give away CM Punk or Bryan Danielson right now. But if I was Tony, I would say, Vince, you can have anybody else, just like Watts did to Jarrett. And Jarrett did to Watts, said you can have anybody but Junkyard Dog, and Jerry Jarrett said you can have anybody but Jerry Lawler. I would say, Vince, you can have anybody I got except for Punk and Danielson. Give me fucking Heyman. Because what he's got, not only do I not have and can't get anywhere else, nobody else has got it. That still feels like being associated with the wrestling business. But then he'd have to worry that Paul Lee in the next 18 months would take the fucking company away from him, because now you're a fucking local yokel working at the fucking Main Street Kmart, and you're dealing with an international yacht broker from Toulon, France. Paul would probably end up Shad Khan would adopt Paul, and fucking Tony would become an emancipated minor in 18 months. I get it. No.
Well, seriously,
except for the danger that Paul Heyman would take over the entire company. The one thing that Tony Khan needs above any other wrestlers is Heyman's brain.
So you see it as more a behind-the-scenes role than an on-camera role?
Well, everything. On camera, off camera. If Paul Heyman is still so interested in either making a large amount of money or is doing this for the love of the game, that he goes to these WWF shows every fucking week, that he flies to Saudi fucking Arabia, then certainly one would think that if you said, okay, Paul, come in here and just figure out what's wrong and fix everything. He's the closest one I can think of to a wrestling doctor that would still give a shit and would want to come in there and fix some stuff.
Okay, so if that's what you think AEW's ask should be, looking at it from the WWE perspective, not just what they would demand, but what could they really use? What would they want? Who would they want from the AEW roster for Heyman?
Well, they would have to ask for some of their property back, I guess, because they've had anybody worth a shit. Practically, they've had them, except for then. Do you go for a pick that is not going to make a difference now, but will make a difference down the road? Then you enter into the MJFs. Or the fucking maybe a powerhouse Hobbs or somebody, but that's a long shot. Punk would be a benefit to their program, but he don't want to be there, and they don't want him because he don't want to be there. Danielson was just there, left on purpose, because they didn't want to let him do what he wanted to do. So for Vince to get somebody from AEW, it would have to be one of the young guys that they believe. And it wouldn't be Darby Allin, because he would never fit the WWF.
Let me propose a trade. I'm going to do it baseball style, where I add in different things, all right?
Okay.
The WWE will be offering Paul Heyman and Braun Breaker.
Oh!
In exchange, AEW. Now tell me where you think it's unfair. Powerhouse Hobbs, Dante Martin, Sammy Guevara, and Britt Baker. Would you do that if you were either side?
Oh, in AEW in a heartbeat, I would do that. To get Braun Breaker and Paul Heyman for, let's say, 4 nice young talents that none of them are ever going to be in the main event at WrestleMania. Who'd you just mention?
I said, and I wrote Paige originally, but I took Paige off. I wrote Sammy and Britt, Dante and Hobbs.
You would be getting
a future.
But at the same time, you would be getting guys that would be excellent in the future, and only one of them probably would ever main event WrestleMania, versus 2 guys that one in the ring and one behind the scenes could really fucking make a difference with your opposition right now. So that'd kind of be like when Bill Watts got the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, myself, Terry Taylor, and Bill Dundee, and Jerry Jarrett got Rick Rude before he knew what the fuck he was doing, Hacksaw Larry Higgins, and Masayo Ito.
Would you do Heyman for Cody?
Oh, good God, in a heartbeat. But say, here's the thing.
If you were WWE, would you do it? If you were WWE,
if I was WWE, no.
Like, do they appreciate the genius of Heyman? You're going under the assumption Tony Khan will appreciate what Heyman, and I think he would. Tony Khan would appreciate what Paul Heyman would bring to the table.
Yeah, but right now, if you've said, okay, you can have Cody back, Vince, but instead, you got to give up Heyman, he's like, well, then who's going to fucking make sure that Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar don't do anything stupid? Paul Heyman. If I lose him, I'm going to put fucking Cody in there to produce Lesnar and Roman?
Okay, let's take Heyman out of it then. Let's talk about wrestlers. And I threw Braun Breaker in there just to have a conversation piece, but it could be anyone. Is there anyone, NXT or main roster, that would be a perfect fit for AEW? And likewise, there's a good equal trade back.
Oh,
either with someone of stature or younger talent.
That's not fair because I have all 175 roster talents in the WWE that they haven't fired yet memorized. So, of course, somebody's going to say, well, you fucking idiot, you didn't say so-and-so. But it's not an easy call off the top of my head to think of one, no.
Would you do Austin Theory for Sammy Guevara?
Yes. In a heartbeat.
Both sides? You think WWE would want Sammy Guevara?
No.
That's what I'm saying. It has to be a win-win, one that really makes sense for both sides.
That's what I'm saying. Again, WWE would look at, wait a minute. Sammy Guevara does the big dives, but Austin Theory is several inches taller and 20 or 30 pounds heavier and is probably the same age, but has a more solid upside in our company because Sammy Guevara would never main event WrestleMania. But meanwhile, if Austin Theory goes to AEW, he doesn't have as many veterans like the Danielsons that he could work with and show that he's a prodigy and does all the little things correctly and the stuff you can't teach, because he'd be in there with a bunch of flippy, floppy, slippy flying guys like Sammy is, and Sammy can do that shit, and Austin Theory can't. So Austin Theory, one of these days, should main event WrestleMania. Sammy Guevara never will because of size and style. So it would be a good trade for AEW, but not. That's why I'm saying, and honestly, because of the differences in both promotions, you can say what would be better for their in-ring product and what would the guys learn more from, or what would draw more money right now and in the foreseeable future. And some of the WWE guys wouldn't translate, and most of the AEW guys wouldn't translate. The AEW guys that would translate to the WWE are the ones that have already been there. And then you got a guy like MJF that can do anything.